Welcome to True Health Tuesday, and the truth will set you free. Okay, next time we'll do it as a group. Okay, today we're going to talk about adrenals. Now, what's a trip is, everyone keeps talking about adrenal fatigue, the link between adrenals and thyroid. Well, the biggest deal is that it's like the great mimicker. I mean, if you look at this, has anyone been awake at night and tired during the day? Could be adrenal fatigue. Sinus issues could be adrenal fatigue. I mean, when you look at this, brain fog, out of breath. So this could be an underlying condition in a lot, but what causes it to be stimulated? Now, today, when you turn on the news, there's nothing but fear. And fear is going to cause stress. It's going to cause an abnormal stress response. And if you're like absolutely confident in our leadership of the government, you're absolutely assured that the economy is just strong and will continue so, and thank goodness for the FDIC. Yeah, you know, okay. So when we're looking at this, we have a lot of opportunities to be scared. The definition of stress is any adverse stimulus, physical, mental, or emotional. What they don't say in here is what about chemicals, chemical stress. So we are under stress, everyone. I mean, it's completely abnormal for our species. See, back in the old days, we would be under stress when we were, being attacked or we had to run away from something. Now it's there chronically. I mean, all you got to do is think about what's happening to your parents or what's happening to your kids, and you can develop this. So how does your body respond to stress? Well, it responds intelligently 100% of the time. So first, your brain, the amygdala's got to think about the situation. Now, let's say you're walking down a lighted street, you see a dark alley. Now, if this is a familiar dark alley and your house is at the end of the block, you're kind of excited. If you've been mugged 3 or 4 times before, you're a little anxious. So this baby, the amygdala, instantly sends it to the hypothalamus. Now the hypothalamus, because the amygdala is going to judge it safe or dangerous. The hypothalamus has got 1 foot in the endocrine system, 1 foot in the nervous system. So it's going to say, hey, look, we got to fire up the adrenal glands. We got to shut blood supply down to the gut. So all of this activity takes place. So you got the liver starting to break glycogen down to glucose, heart rate elevates, blood pressure elevates, all in the perception of stress, not just what's happening to you. Like, let's say it's your first time to a chiropractor. I mean, good God, they said don't touch me. I know. So you can have a lot of stressors up here, okay? So then the hypothalamus is unique because it's going to create a massive hormonal cascade. Again, these are intelligent responses. The problem is we have these feedback loops because it's designed to keep you alive. And hypothalamus, pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis. So you look at it, there's a lot of different things that have a feedback loop into itself. The challenge is when the stress hormones are released, there's not an off mechanism. They're utilized until they're used up. So have you ever done anything like ridiculously scary? Like roller coaster rides? Okay, skydiving is fun. Deep sea diving, fun. Okay, you put me on a roller coaster ride, I'm shaking like 5 minutes after I get off because the adrenaline is up and I did not enjoy it. So all of this, your perception of the environment is going to lead to a sympathetic dominant state. Now we have this automatic nervous system. One part keeps you alive under stress, that's sympathetic, that's the fight or flight. The other part regenerates tissue, that's parasympathetic. So if you understand that when you're in a stress state, blood supply to the gut's going to shut down, blood sugar is going to be elevated because the liver is going to start to break glycogen down to glucose, heart rate's going to be elevated. So when you look at this, chronic stress is misdiagnosed by the allopathic system. See, what they're doing is when you go to a place, that's supposed to be a sick care. No, they call it what? Healthcare. Okay, healthcare. I get that because when you go there, they're going to check your blood pressure. Okay, they're going to check your blood sugar. They're going to check, ask you, do you have indigestion? Do you have some anxiety or stress? How's your sleep patterns? And they're going to put you in a category and give you a toxic chemical that's going to change your physiology. No one's going to say, wow, your body's been under physical, chemical, or emotional stress. Let's do a detailed assessment of it. So now you got these adrenal glands, okay, which are the pharmacy of the body. They sit on top of the filter, the kidneys, which if you've got something that makes every glucocorticosteroid, mineralocorticosteroid, and sex hormone, you put it on an area that filters all the blood, it just makes sense. Now, it's controlled by the hypothalamus, but what does the adrenal glands, where does it get the raw materials? The raw materials for everything the adrenal glands make is cholesterol. Now, if you've been told by the television and told by the medical world or the allopathic world that cholesterol clogs arteries, that's absolutely not true. Cholesterol is the precursor to just about every fat-soluble hormone you make. It's absolutely essential for survival. It's 50% of your overall weight of your brain. This is vital for your survival. Now, there's a number of different types of cholesterol. There's high-density lipoprotein, and that's the protein carrier that carries the cholesterol back from the site of injury back to the liver for storage. 80% of your overall cholesterol is stored by your liver, only 20% is from diet. And then LDL, low-density lipoprotein, brings the cholesterol to the site of injury or to the gland for usage. So ignorant doctors will say, wow, you got high LDL. Damn, that's bad. Your body is malfunctioning. You need this cholesterol-lowering drug. Okay, well, how about if a doctor wants to induce fear in you, we know that's going to induce the sympathetic or fight or flight response, will elevate cholesterol anyway. But ask him, say, gee, doc, what's busted on my body? Why is my body elevating cholesterol? What's broken? What's the natural regulatory mechanism? That is how you go boom like that to some doctor that doesn't understand physiology. You're verbally kicking and then the testicles. So when you look at this, signs of adrenal fatigue, and it's going to seem weird, but if you're awake at night, okay, you're a night person, but you're tired during the day, that could be adrenal fatigue. Weight gain in the belly, seat, and thighs, okay? Achy. Now, think of this. Cortisol is one of the greatest anti-inflammatories around. And now, right now, in our food supply, we have a number of different, like hydrogenated vegetable oils, we have a number of processed foods. All of these things actually damage the arteries. They can damage the tissue, they can damage the lining of the intestinal tract. And that damaged tissue causes inflammation. So it's going to cause inflammatory cytokines to be released into the tissue, and that could cause achy joints everywhere. Has anyone in here ever have a cold? Okay, well, what happens, and this is the cool part, when you go in there and you have a cold, your immune system destroys these little viruses, destroys the bacteria. However, when you release that, when you break those guys up and kill them, they release histamines, and this is why you're achy and sore everywhere. Okay? Well, achy and soreness, your adrenals, man, they're going to kick out cortisol, one of the greatest anti-inflammatories known. So if you have adrenal fatigue, or you're always under inflammation, you're always under stress, you're going to have achy joints everywhere. Do you think this is why a lot of the cholesterol-lowering drugs have muscle problems and achy joints attached to it? Could it be because they're lowering the amount of cholesterol available for the adrenal glands to produce cortisol? Possibly. Brain fog. What's the number one thing when people come in and they say, Jane, I just can't remember. I'll walk into a room and I'll forget what I was there for. Okay, we'll say, how do you sleep at night? Okay, I mean, we're talking basic stuff, because if you're in an adrenal dominant or a stressed state, you're not sleeping correctly. And this is huge. When you look at this, short-term cortisol keeps you alive. It's the greatest anti-inflammatory known. So you're talking, it balances blood sugars, helps you with fat metabolism, helps with blood pressure, I mean, everything. But chronically, it kills you. And then we got this feedback loop. So imagine this, okay, impaired cognitive performance. So does it make sense that if you're under a chronic state of stress, that your brain isn't going to function correctly? So does that mean that physical, chemical, or emotional stress are going to negatively affect the brain? Yeah, that's why the last 2 weeks we've been talking about gut-brain connection. Well, what happens when you're in that stress state, what happens to blood supply to the gut? It decreases. And that's 80% of your immune system. So this is huge. Blood sugar imbalances. How many people today are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes? 95% of all diabetics are type 2. And that is the result of a poisoning or chronic stress. It's not a disease. How can it, if somebody has a disease, okay, and you change your diet or change your stress load, then you don't have it. Do you think it's a disease? Okay, maybe you can, yeah, that's a disease. I'm sure it is. Yeah, let's take metformin or glucophage. Yeah, even though if you take that stuff, it damages the heart. So, that doesn't make any sense. So my definition of a disease is something attacking your body, and then you're developing a response to it. But it's just from lifestyle choices of toxic food or stress. I don't think that's a disease. Okay, does that make sense? But this decreased bone density. So people are coming in with osteoporotic. Is it really a disease or is it chronic stress? The sleep disruption though, and think of this, cortisol long-term is associated with depression, migraines, lupus, diabetes, aging, multiple sclerosis. But the sleep, and this is the key, when you're under chronic cortisol stimulation or chronic adrenal stimulation, you got sleep problems. So what does lack of sleep do? You're talking just about everything. Cardiovascular disease. What if you have heart issues? Okay, cancer, obesity, memory loss, Alzheimer's. I mean, you're talking virtually every kind of function, kidney disease, dementia. And so when you look at this, when you're going to the allopathic doctor, where they're going to take symptoms and prescribe you a toxic chemical, because does anybody think that medications are designed to cure the disease? Okay, no, just watch an American commercial. I think we only have drug commercials in America and New Zealand. Okay, they have you running through a field of flowers, and then they talk for 5 minutes how your eyes will bleed and, you'll be impotent, but you don't care, you're running through the field of flowers. So now think of this, the drugs that negatively affect sleep. Now we already talked about if you're not getting sleep, your adrenal glands are firing off. So can you see if you're not getting sleep, you're going to be in an adrenal dominant state. What does the adrenal dominant state do to your physiology? It shuts blood supply down to the gut, causes brain fog, weakens the immune system response, increases the risk of disease. Now, all of these drugs disturb the sleep. That means all of these drugs will lead to adrenal fatigue. And we're talking every kind of blood pressure drug, appetite suppression, antacids. When I was a kid, okay, and I'm not talking 12 years old, I'm hauling lumber and stuff on construction sites. You'd go to Denny's with the old guys in the morning, and they would have Tums and Rolaids at the counter when you checked out. And my boss, Joe Griffin, he said, yeah, those are contractor pills. I don't know how long it took for the manager to say, having antacids when they pay probably isn't a good idea for advertising our food. Okay, does anybody remember those? Okay, just, attention deficit disorder drugs, cold medications. I mean, virtually every kind of drug out there is going to lead to adrenal fatigue because it damages the body. Now we have the hypothalamus, pituitary adrenal axis, and if this is chronically stimulated, it's leaving you in a chronically stressed state, blood pressure, heart attack, stroke. And there is no off button to it. It just doesn't make any sense. Then we have how many people are misdiagnosed with thyroid disorders? Everybody. Why? Because if you have inflammatory foods, like let's say you're eating hydrogenated vegetable oils, you're eating processed foods, you're eating cows that were fed bovine growth hormone and then ground up, you're eating chickens that are eating BT corn, okay, which actually damages their intestinal tract and gets embedded in the meat. All of the commercially produced meats, the commercially produced dairy, okay, this is poisonous to your body. That's going to damage tissue. You get tissue damage, guess what adrenal glands are going to do? They're going to produce the greatest anti-inflammatory known, cortisol. Cortisol suppresses the thyroid. So how many people with a low functioning thyroid did the doctor go in and say, wow, is your diet organic, plant-based, natural, or are you eating the crap food that the television tells you to eat? You know, can you see this? So typically it's not a thyroid, okay, that's low functioning. It could be alternate signals coming from the hypothalamus. It could be excessive inflammatory foods. It could be excessive stress. All of that, because you've got that balance of the autonomic nervous system. You've got the sympathetic and parasympathetic. One can only be up at a time. You're only going to be sleeping or regenerating tissue or awake and fighting, road rage. So you can only have one at a time. Well, the thyroid and adrenal glands are the same way. Adrenals are up, thyroid's down. So if you're in a chronic state of stress, those adrenal glands are going to be firing off for forever. Now look at this. I mean, when you start to see this, if you could say stress is the source of most diseases, would you be accurate when you're looking at this list? Chronic stress and adrenal glands, you're talking depression, hypoglycemia, weakened immune system, inflammatory conditions. Does this mean inflammatory bowel disorders? Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. Could these all be the end result of stress? Or go to the allopathic system and read what they say inflammatory bowel is from. Do you know what it's from? Idiopathic. We don't frigging know. We're not going to look into it. Attention deficit, unknown. High blood pressure, do you know what it's from? Unknown. Neither do they. And everybody else on the planet is going to say, geez, high blood pressure is an intelligent response based on the physical, chemical, or emotional stress. It's the body adapting. Now, this is a typical patient that comes into our office. And what's frustrating is, you know what I really want to say when somebody says, look, I got high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and a low functioning thyroid. Okay, now they're in a delusionary state, granted. Okay, they just came from the medical world. Okay, and they think that this stuff is really there. Okay, so what does high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and a low functioning thyroid sound like? Stress! Okay, what does it sound like? Stress, you're right. This stuff doesn't exist. The body's really intelligent. So we got that big red, green, yellow thing on the side there. The left half is sympathetic dominant. The right half is parasympathetic dominant. Everybody should have that balance. That little white dot that's stuck down in the chronic sympathetic dominant state should be in the green zone. That 46 number at the top of that should be 95. So this person is in a chronic sympathetic dominant state. They are in fight or flight chronically. And how long have they had high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and low functioning thyroid? God knows. Okay? But do you think that someone's in a chronic sympathetic dominant state, the adrenals are firing off like crazy, they're exhausted, nothing's working right, their immune system's weak, now we're going to get them better by giving them a beta blocker, a diuretic, a metformin, and glucophage? Don't worry, we'll give them thyroxine too. Okay? But we're not going to look at any other stress factor that they have. This is the medical world. I mean, you really got to talk to people slow when they first come in, because that girl actually thought that they had it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, does it? Okay, well, beside from which, what causes type 2 diabetes in the medical world? Unknown. What causes thyroid disorders? Unknown. What causes high blood pressure? Unknown. But here's the drug for it. I know. You got to know, 100 years from now, they're going to be playing this tape and they'll be going, no, that was so bullshit. Nobody could be that stupid. Okay. But it's true. Okay, so you look at this. Okay, now this is going to sound really weird. The stuff that you do to help cortisol and the stuff that you do to help thyroid. Okay, now what raises cortisol? Low thyroid function, obviously, because you can only have one firing off at the time. Inflammation, of course, because you need cortisol to handle the inflammatory process. Stress, tissue damage, vaccinations, toxic food. Vaccinations, what if you get, say, 36 shots by the time you're 1 year old? Do you think that perhaps that could have an adrenal dominant state or inflammatory response in the body? Yeah, of course. If you're talking lungs inflamed, the kid's got asthma. Brain inflamed, the kid's got encephalitis or autism, okay? Bowels inflamed, you're talking, inflammatory bowel disorder and everything else. So 36 shots, all of them inducing an inflammatory response. So all of this stuff, toxic food. Now, what kind of stuff lowers cortisol? Because this is going to be like the key. Because if we're talking adrenal fatigue as a source of all of these, the solution's got to be something really weird and exotic. Healthy thyroid function. Damn. Wait, let's go. What helps the healthy thyroid? A healthy gut. So does that mean fermented food and real food, plant-based diet, organic? Low cortisol levels. So that means stuff that doesn't damage the tissue. Healthy food and water, low stress, vegetables, healthy water. It can't be that simple, is it? Is our bodies that smart that they function on their own? This is the biggest key, because we have so many people, and we're talking people that are totally bought in the medical world, that the doctor really knows what the heck they're doing. This is why the average person over 60 has taken 12 prescriptions a year, to handle stress-related illnesses, because they don't know anything else to do. So they bought into that system. And then you get the natural ones that are saying, my naturopath just gave me some adrenal support and some thyroid support and this support and that support. And I go, okay, well, why is the adrenal gland malfunctioning? And they don't know, because the adrenal gland is not malfunctioning. You can't take, multiple areas of adrenal support to counteract a defective, toxic, stressed lifestyle. Does that make sense? Do not blame the thyroid. I got a bad thyroid. No. Do not blame the adrenal glands. Okay? How many skydiving jumps have you had? 20,000, 30,000?
2,300.
Okay, so he's not going to blame his adrenal glands for jumping out of a plane 10,000 feet in the air. They function correctly at that, So when you look at this, what's behind, we have an epidemic of hypothyroid, or thyroids that aren't functioning correctly. Is it really an epidemic? Is your species defective, or is your species toxic with inflammatory materials like medications and food that are damaging it? So hair loss, carpal tunnel syndrome, weight, achiness, none of this stuff is really existing. It all has to do with how the body is responding to the stress. So to cover up and drug or take nutrients or supplements to mask the physical, chemical, or emotional stress does not lead to health. When we look at this, causes of low functioning thyroid, heavy metal exposure. Yes, I know there's aluminum in every shot. And yes, I know that the Supreme Court said vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. And I know since we passed the law that had no liability on the vaccine manufacturers, that they tripled the number of vaccines since the late 80s. I know that, okay? So when we look at the heavy metal exposures, our entire population is exposed to it. Enzyme deficiencies, polyunsaturated fats like canola, soy, vegetable oil, sunflower oil, all of this stuff. So thyroxine, so many patients are taking this. Why? Because the patient came up and said, "Doc, I really don't have a lot of energy." Okay, so we're going to check the pituitary to see if the pituitary is spitting out TSH is high and T3, T4 is low. because T3 and T4 is converted mainly in the liver, okay? And so if you have a low functioning T3, T4 and a high TSH, it's like the pituitary screaming down, please increase production, increase production. However, since most of this stuff is converted in the liver, what if you're taking Tylenol on a regular basis? Are you gonna have a low conversion? Yeah. What if you have any of the other stressors that can alter that balance? Is anyone doing a cortisol test? 20 years ago, I know they weren't, because if cortisol's high, that means that the adrenal glands are high. So can you see how many people are coming in here with taking thyroid drugs for 20, 30 years? And I'll say, well, why were you doing it? Well, you know, my doctor said that I was tired. Okay? Honest to goodness. So thyroxine, it's not really what your body produces. It's different. Like if you hear bioidentical hormones, that's a lie. They're not identical. They may be somewhat bioavailable, but that's not how the body works. So the thyroxine is really an anti-thyroid hormone. It suppresses how the thyroid functions. But remember, it's close. It looks kind of like something that your body makes. So some organ tissue is going to recognize it and say, wow, this is cool. Then you're going to, maybe the hair will stop falling out and you're going to have some energy, but there's always going to be some other organ systems that aren't going to recognize it. Does that make sense? And still, the underlying problem isn't lack of thyroxine in your diet. Not sarcasm? Anyone? Okay, just checking. So let's clean up the kidneys, okay, because the kidneys are the blood filter and we're being poisoned. So this is how you clean the kidneys. Kidneys are a blood filter. Every 20 minutes, you got 6 quarts of blood going through these guys. So soluble fibers, this is why juicing and blending. Now, if you've been doing a lot of medications, okay, watch out for the beets, because the beets are going to start to clean the liver. It turns your pee and poo red, which can freak out kids. It is. It's weird. Okay, but it's fantastically good for the kidney. Seaweeds, lemon juice, spinach. But if you're going to clean the kidneys, it doesn't make any sense if you still have a toxic deficient lifestyle. Does that make sense? You're not going to have a crappy immune system and still, you know, try and clean up the thing. That's why if you're going to do a liver flush or gallbladder flush, we always tell people don't do it until you're up to 3 bowel movements a day. Because if you're at 1 bowel movement a day and you're cleansing your body, you're just going to reabsorb some of the toxins. So let's look at the immune system. We have we're just going to break it up into 2 parts. One part, because we're talking about stress, and the majority of our population is stressed, we have a Th1 response. Now this isn't going to involve humoral and cellular components, or long-term genetic memory and acute antibody response. So this is brilliant. This is what you want to do. Okay, you need a healthy gut flora for it. So you get exposed to a virus, fungus, bacteria, pathogen, something. It hits the mucous membranes. Your mucous membranes swell up. Histamines are released, okay? It's hard to breathe. You develop a fever, okay? Some of that mucus, you start to develop a cough. And then eventually it's going to go through your body's immune system and you're going to get some diarrhea too, which is going to alkalinize the system. You know what I just described? The cure for the common cold. It actually is the common cold. So now, since you've developed cellular and humoral responses, you're protected from this virus or pathogen and any similar pathogens. This is why when you used to see normal, healthy kids running around, and we used to call them snotty-nosed little kids, that's because they're always working on their immune system response. They're brand new to the world. Their immune systems are immature, and so they need that. You don't see a lot of 80-year-olds running around wiping their nose because they've had a number of different exposures, so they're healthier, okay? And this is why. And there's certain things, data points that say if a child has 7 viral infections by the time they're 7, that they're protected from heart disease and multiple sclerosis, and their immune systems are stronger. So you don't want to weaken this immune system response, you want to help it. Now we have the acute inflammatory response. Now this only involves antibodies. This is what happens when you get a splinter. Okay, and so you're not designed to have a really long-term effect on this. And that doesn't require a healthy gut, and it only involves antibody or humoral responses. Welcome to the old schedule of 2017. Okay, now remember, in 1986 they passed a law that absolved any responsibility of the manufacturers of the vaccines. And all of the liability or all of the damage was going to be paid by your taxes on the shots. So they are like free. So now this is one of the things that should be in the news, because the number of shots didn't stay the same. And the reason they passed the law is because the shots were so dangerous that some of the companies were going out of business. So they didn't make the human population safer. They didn't make the products safer. They just tripled the number of products. Now, since this started to frighten some educated people, then they started to force it on. So they decided to take away the religious exemption and personal belief exemptions. Mississippi led the way. California followed them. Oh, by the way, is anyone in here pro-science? Yeah? Okay, then you understand the scientific method, that it has to have a randomized controlled trial, long period of time, where you take 3 groups of people, one gets the real therapy, one gets a fake therapy, one you don't get, and then you follow them for, what do you think? You know, let's say we're doing an injectable. Few days, a couple of months, or a few years? A few years. Okay, that's never been done with this, ever. So if you're into science, you cannot possibly be into this. Now, when you'll see the commercials on TV, you know, the ones that advertise the antihistamine, but it'll cause bleeding. We just saw one that you inject in your lips and it swells up your lips so they look big and full, but it can cause blistering and hives and stroke and blood pressure. But those lips look great, okay? But they go through, you're not going to see that on vaccines, ever. They're never going to go through the list of negative effects of them because they're called public service messages. Wow. Okay, human experimental toxicology studies have not been done. They have not been done to see if this is safe or efficacious. And just common sense, I know there's most of the people in here have it. Do you think that if you take 2 children and inject them with 69 doses of 16 different vaccines, that they're going to have the same reactions? From the Journal of Environmental International, they're looking for autism spectrum disorders, and they're saying, yeah, sure enough, this can be from the heavy metals, especially the aluminum used in vaccines, pesticides, phthalates. So it's not just the vaccines, it's the number of different toxins. It's just, if you're not aware of the problem, you're not going to be able to fix it. And realizing that we have until 2025 or 2030, when 1 in 2 American boys will have it, this generation is pretty damning. Now here's 2 7-year-old kids, just darling. The one on the right, that's what a leaky gut looks like on an x-ray. So this is an inflammatory bowel disorder, okay, in a 7-year-old. And they're not related, but we had a 7-year-old that same day that came in, and I thought, well, this is pretty cool, because most people don't look at hundreds and hundreds of x-rays like we do. And sure enough, so this is what a normal gut looks like on the left, and this is an unvaccinated 7-year-old. I know you're thinking, damn it, those ignorant parents, that little infectious 7-year-old running around unvaccinated. Okay, well, has anyone in here not been vaccinated in the last 10 years? Raise your hand. Okay, vaccines last an average about 4 to 8 years, so you are also part of those unvaccinated little people spreading diseases. Get on the adult vaccine schedule. Okay, yeah, so let's induce fear and stupid. Okay, it works. This is what drives me crazy. I mean, I've been doing this over 20 years, and I'm not used to seeing 8 and 10-year-old kids with ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. I mean, none of this stuff makes sense. These are kids. They're supposed to be playing kick the can. Okay, so the HPV shot, okay, is now being outlawed in multiple countries. And I just put this one up because I do not like the commercials. Mom, didn't you know? Okay, well, we're injecting preteens with this stuff and it's causing primary ovarian insufficiency. Okay, I mean, this is infertility. So it's tough if you're injecting something in a 12-year-old and that 12-year-old may eventually be older, okay, and that they may eventually want to have kids, but they can't do it because they got the shot. Okay, it just doesn't make any sense. Here's an 83-year-old gal, numb hangs, anxiety, fatigue, and high blood pressure. When you hear high blood pressure, from now on, I want you to think of stress state. Make sense? She's 83 and her hands are going numb. Is that relaxing or scary as all hell? Yeah, you can't button your stuff. I mean, if you look at Renee Calmet, okay, 123 years old or 122 years old in France. She smoked for over 100 years, and the reason she stopped smoking is because she felt it was bad to ask other people to light her cigarette because her hands weren't working. So this is really scary. Okay, that's a weird analogy, but it made sense in my brain before it came out. But when you look at this, sympathetic dominant again. You know, she's in the yellow, but so what does that mean? Is she sleeping good? No. Does she have slow gastromotility? Probably. So do we need to get her healthy, look for the physical, chemical, and emotional stress? Bottom line, that's it. You don't drug symptoms. That's just dumb. And then what if you do drug a symptom, like high blood pressure? Which high blood pressure, is that a stress state or is that a stress state? It's stress state, yeah. It could be dehydration, that could bring it up. Okay, it could be toxic deficient lifestyle. This article says when you control it correctly with blood pressure drugs, you're in greater risk of stroke. So the drugs work, they control it. You're in as much trouble by the time you're on 3 medications that achieve excellent control, they work, as you are when you have hypertension that is untreated, which is amazing. It's amazing to this guy because he still doesn't understand. He's giving a drug to someone who's in a stressed state. And that makes them more stressed. Okay? I mean, I want this is, you got to drive this home. And then this one, regardless of the etiology, all the chronic disease, and we're talking 54% of America's children today have a chronic illness or disease. That's right, our children, the ones that are going to be paying in for Social Security, is the underlying is an autonomic dysfunction. It's not a dysfunction. They're in a stress state. That's it. Okay? Cholesterol drugs lead to type 2 diabetes. Cholesterol drugs lead to heart failure, epidemic. Wait, I thought the cholesterol drugs were supposed to help this. No, think of this. What does cholesterol do? It's the precursor to every hormone your adrenals make. It's the 50% of your overall brain weight. It's responsible for tissue production, and you reduce that causes damage. Statin therapy, according to clinical cardiology, decreases heart muscle function. Don't worry, all the Klingons in here are okay. They have 2 hearts. Do you guys, okay. Okay, it's vital for neurologic function. Okay, look at all of the data points out there. Look at the cholesterol myth. If you still have a doctor that's prescribing cholesterol drugs or doesn't understand that high elevations of cholesterol are a dangerous stress response, that this is an intelligent response by the body and can't be handled just by lowering cholesterol, you have to look a little bit further. So now, how do we fix this craziness? First, what do you do for fun? You know, how many times I've gone to a store and someone will say, "How you doing today, sir?" And I'll say, "Really, really good." It's like I slapped them. And I'll go, "No, I really, really am." You know, it's just, but I mean, I like doing stuff for fun. I'm actually pretty lazy. I don't think I would work if it wasn't fun. So do something that you love. Because why? If you're doing something that you love, that's of joy, what is this going to do to the adrenal stress load? Okay, if you can get in nature, walking barefoot. What do we have our patients do when we're seeing them 3 times a day? We say, get your shoes off, walk barefoot in the grass or hard sand. Why? Not only is that a grounding aspect, which has a higher antioxidant, but it changes proprioception, has a calming effect on the body. I mean, when was the last time you laid in a park and looked up through the tree? Okay, everybody, do you remember that? Okay, I know. You're feeling good just remembering it. So am I. Okay, this is the stuff that taxes the adrenal glands. And I'm talking 1 to 2 cups of coffee a day is fantastic. And I don't mean cups, okay? I mean cups, okay? But if you're doing more, particularly if you're doing, after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that can stress out the adrenal glands. And if you're already in a stress state, that can add further. If you're taking this stuff other than just for joy because you like the flavor and you've done it for 20, 30 years, okay, but if you're taking it to counteract a sleep, this is going to have a negative long-term effect. The Red Bull type energy drinks, okay, those again, if you look at the ingredients, they're toxic chemicals. Okay, processed sugar, caffeinated teas, tobacco, which sucks because we're going to Cuba. Okay, so hopefully you'll be resting a lot on the boat. So when you have your Cuban cigar, you're not going to be in an adrenal fatigue state. Okay. Excessive exercise, and that's what's interesting too, because you got to figure a lot of people in an adrenal dominant state, they're adrenaline junkies. Why? Because they're already in that stress state. Remember, adrenaline doesn't have an off button. So these guys are adrenaline junkies. They want to jump, hide, do everything, and then they crash. Violent video games. Have you ever seen a teenager in a little tiny room, screaming, yelling, everything? Okay, what do you think's happening to their digestion? What do you think happens to their brain? Okay, brain fog, immune system problems. Okay, that's going to shut blood supply down to the gut. Okay, if you understand skin issues, and there's going to be eczema, psoriasis, all come from low stomach acid. So this, when you're talking about aggressive video games, it does a lot of things to the psyche. Now you take a vaccinated, fully vaccinated teenager who's had around 48 to 54 inflammatory heavy metal shots, and then you put them in a stressed out environment and feed them toxic food, you have danger. And this is the tough part. When you look at this, if you've had a life-changing event, like a loss of a spouse or the loss of a loved one or something, okay, the toughest part, and this is why we've got an entire video series on how to change your perspective. Any negative event that you've had, look at it like a spinning top, all black on one side where it's all horrible, all white on the other side where it's all perfect. Nothing is like that. If you talk about the death of a child, which is horrible, okay, will it make you appreciate the other kids? Okay, when you hear that story, will you just hug your loved one a little bit more? Will you appreciate the ones that are there? Will you give a fond, loving memory to the ones that you've lost? Do you know what I mean? There's always balance. And mastery of life, you spin that top. And that top, the mastery of any challenging circumstance that you've had, when that top spins, you see both sides at the same time. And then you have what's called wisdom. The most frustrating thing is years ago, I think it was like 15, 16 years ago, a 16-year-old came in with her aunt and she was taking antidepressants. And I said, well, why are you taking that? She said, both my parents were killed in a car wreck. Okay, so do you think she needed antidepressants? Was it a medical condition? Or was she sad and had to go through life? And counseling, absolutely. So we're too quick to medicate when we have to appreciate that just going through life. Because if you've been living on this planet, and I've only been here a little bit over half a century, just like 58 years, although my half birthday, so I'm actually officially 58 and a half. Half birthday was in October, thank you. So when you look at this, you've had successes and failures and trauma. So this is vital to understand the emotional aspect of it. Other stuff you can do. I mean, B3, vitamin C, beta carotene, minerals, iodine. You need all of the healthy nutrients that we've always recommended. Exercise, but not to the extreme. Now, if you're tired and you haven't expended energy, if you get up and go for a quick walk, guess what? You get more energy. It's the weirdest thing ever. But now, if you're completely fatigued and you go for a walk, you could be taxing the adrenal glands. So this is why exercise is absolutely essential, at least a half hour a day. But if you're not sleeping at night, you could be taxing yourself too much. Sleep. We've got, I think, a 5-hour series on sleep. Okay, sleep is one of the key factors, and you can do it, but without sleep, your body can never get out of that sympathetic dominant state. This is why you have to do either sleep restrictive therapy and understand that when you're sleeping, okay, optimal human function is 6.5 to 7.5 hours. That's if you're professional sleeper. And this means you got to prepare your mind. You're going to journal right before bed. You're going to read right before bed, a paper book. You got to avoid electronics like TV, cell phones, computers. You got to put nightshades on. If it's a noisy area, you got to get a white noise application for your cell phone. You go to bed at 10 to 10:30. You get out of bed at 4 to 4:30. Within 5 days of that pattern, you're going to be sleeping through the night. You're not going to get up to pee. You're not going to be rolling over because you're resetting your circadian rhythms. Check out our sleep videos because you're not going to get the whole thing in a 30-second soundbite. But you have to master sleep because this is when your body, the parasympathetic nervous system, kicks in. You have to have an organic plant-based lifestyle. If it's too expensive, now remember, I was the youngest of 4 kids raised by a single mom in the San Fernando Valley. So we would have one meal Sunday. Monday night we would have leftovers. Tuesday we would add potatoes or pasta to it. By Wednesday it would be soup or stew. By Thursday it would be soup. And then Friday we would go out to some burger joint. I mean, that was, did anybody else have a lifestyle like that? Okay, do you still love leftovers? I'm telling you, it's like fun, it's creative, okay? It's a blast, okay? So if you can't afford organic, talk to local farmers, okay? See if they're growing it without pesticides. Get frozen organic. There's gonna be ways to do it, really. Healthy fats, you need the healthy fats to produce healthy hormones. Fermented veggies, why? Because you gotta build up that gut flora. 30,000 species in your gut. And if you have a healthy gut flora, you're gonna be able to have a healthy immune system response. Juice and vegetables, blend fruits, raw dairy, I mean, it just makes sense. The healthy fats are the key. Omega-3s, animal fat-based omega-3s are gonna be the best. Coconut oil, olive oil, grass-fed butter. I mean, realize that cholesterol is good for you. We've got a couple, one of my friends, and he's a patient too, he's a brilliant pediatrician. He doesn't vaccinate anymore because he actually caused damage in his kids and became enlightened. I can't mention his name because they could pull his license for actually being a real doctor. But he gives cholesterol supplements to his autistic kids and he's seeing them get help and recover. So this is huge. Okay, so this is how you deal with adrenal problems effectively. Realize that it's functioning correctly. You got to get your nervous system checked. I just showed you 2 patients, you got to get it checked. By a corrective chiropractor, it'll list the 7 questions on how to find a good one. Regular exercise, that's a half-hour a day of walking. If man makes it, you don't eat it. Organic plant-based diet, sufficient rest, and prayer and meditation. What would happen if you just took 10 minutes out and did deep breathing and connected with a higher source? Any atheist? Okay, just meditate and do Om. It's still cool, okay? You know, I mean, it just makes sense. Now, all of this stuff, this month, we're going to be talking about Adrenal and Extreme Health Academy. I mean, check it out. It's really good. You're talking webinars. Multiple different doctors are on there. Great at extremehealthacademy.com. And this site, the Dr. John Bergman site, is just loaded with tons of information. So the data's out there. Just get educated. And this, I was just informed that I think there's 1 or 2 cabins left. Okay, if we get rid of those, we can get some more. But I just think it's cool. I mean, going to Cuba, I just think that's cool. Okay, now what time is it? 7:49. Okay, one question. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a link with anemia and adrenals?
Yeah, absolutely there is. Because you got to figure, where's your tissue production? Okay, you get erythropoietin secreted by the adrenal glands, and that tells your long bones to produce more red blood cells. And then the spleen's got to break down the old red blood cells, because red blood cells only last about 120 days. So it's going to be altered spleen function, altered kidney function, or altered health of the long bones where the red cells are produced. And that's why, like people with anemia, they don't ask what the real problem is. You know, it also could be long-term stress, producing less stomach acid, so you get less, you're not able to break the proteins to amino acids, so you have less building products. So if you have bruising everywhere, that could be low stomach acid, which also means that you're bleeding all over the place, so your production isn't up. So that requires, again, a real doctor to do real investigation. But if you're in a mindset of allopathic, where you're already genetically defective, okay, and then where I'm going to give you a drug because with the nutrition and advice like that doesn't make any sense, because you're already predisposed to genetic illness. This is why the medical world doesn't go into nutrition. They just feel that you're genetically predisposed to sickness and illness, so the best thing is palliative care with some toxic medications. Well, that's the training from the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, my training was from really smart guys that said your body's self-healing and self-regulating. It's a totally different mindset. Next week, we're going to cover more healthy stuff. Thank you very much.